Let's welcome back to MidPoint, Chairperson of the Department of Law, Police Science, and Criminal Justice Administration at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, Dr. Maria Haberfeld. Doctor, let's talk about moving forward at this point. The cops are already under assault. We know that there's targets on their backs. And as a matter of fact, there was a story out today that talked about the killer of the cops in New York who was using a traffic application on his cell phone that tracks law enforcement's movements. He was actually able to see since December the 4th where cops were in the New York City area. This is frightening. Cops are being targeted. So knowing this, knowing that every police officer right now has to have a little bit of a hair trigger, knowing what's going on, how do you start making the general public trust you?
Well, it's not something that can happen overnight. We in the criminal justice community or criminologists, we rely on various criminological theories to explain behaviors of the public. One of the theories I would like to address is the labeling theory. Once you label somebody deviant, they become deviant in the eyes of the general public. The police have been labeled as deviant. I'm not making any judgmental statement right now about Mr. Gardner's case or Mr. Brown's case, but even if there was some error of judgment there, it was an error of judgment of a few police officers, not thousands upon thousands of police officers. Yet, the entire police department was labeled as deviant. And a number of cases that people are citing are a fraction of statistically insignificant examples of police misconduct or alleged misconduct. Nobody talks about millions upon millions of calls for service that police officers respond to and handle in a professional way.
However, you will admit that one death of one innocent person by one cop sets everything off at that point. There's nothing statistically insignificant about that.
Statistically, it will still be insignificant. Morally, it will be very significant because every person's life matters. But we have to look at police profession like any other profession. Policing is not an error-free environment. We know it for decades. We know it for hundreds of years. When people are authorized to use coercive force, errors of judgment will happen. But the question is, do we need to demonize the entire profession because of an error of judgment or alleged error of judgment?
Then let's not demonize the entire department, as you just said here, but let's look at it this way. In Milwaukee, there was a white officer who killed a black man there. Recently, the investigation of the Justice Department, they're going to look into it, but locally they said there was no reason to charge him. The officer's been fired. But it's now come to light that he wasn't properly trained. He did conduct an illegal search. So doesn't this say that police departments across the country have to get out in front of this? They got to better train their people. We've had people who've been former cops who said right on this show that it's sloppy at many times. So don't the cops, every police department, have to better train their people and make sure that they're not making these casual mistakes?
Again, this is something I devoted my life to. I'm a training person. I've written books on training, articles. I study it all the time for decades. It's not the police department that's supposed to train police officers better. It's the politician who should allocate additional resources to police departments.
Well, wait a minute. You're saying the police department shouldn't train them? Yes, they do. No, wait a minute. They do have to train them, correct?
They do have to train them, but they have very limited resources that are allocated by the politicians for training. Your audience needs to, and your listeners need to understand that 90%, around 90% of police agencies' budgets go into salaries. So what is left for training and equipment is a fraction of the budget. Average training of a police officer in the United States is about 15 weeks. To me, it's irresponsible that any democratic society would allow police officers to become authorized users of deadly force after 15 weeks of training. But again, who allocates the money for training? These are the local politicians.
So are politicians, and we got about 40 seconds left, are politicians then basically looking for a scapegoat for their own mistakes?
The politicians should understand that if they're not going to allocate additional resources to police departments, everybody will become a scapegoat.
And fair to say that with the militarization of citizens who are carrying more guns these days, a little more help is needed, correct?
a lot of help is needed.
A lot of help is needed. All right. Doctor, I'll tell you, we've opened up a lot of different areas of discussion here, certainly, and we're going to continue to have this discussion because, quite frankly, this is something that needs to go forward and cannot stop right here with one instance in New York City. I will look forward to having you on the show again and talking about this. I want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'll look forward to the next time we speak.
Thank you to you too.
All right, Dr. Maria Haberfeld joining us from John Jay College in New York. Break, and we are back with the latest computerization of your medical world, one that could actually make things easier for doctor and patient. My God, think about that for a moment. Things easier between doctor and patient. Of course, there really won't be a doctor there. We'll explain when we continue on MidPoint.